Hi, everyone. This is Nora Armani, your host, from the founder and artistic director of the Socially Relevant Film Festival, New York, now in its 8th annual edition. It's hard to believe that we made it so far. Last year, our 7th edition was abruptly cut short of 4 days short of its going with a big opening at the Lincoln Center. And suddenly, few months later, we found ourselves going online like everybody else because of COVID, of course, we know the story. And this year, we decided from the get-go that it doesn't look good we still don't have the access to the cinemas. So why don't we, from the get-go, plan on a online festival? Initially, I was being optimistic and I was hoping for a hybrid festival, but here we are online and talking to you live almost twice every day when we have presented panels and workshops and meet the filmmaker talks. All of these talks eventually are going to end up on our YouTube channel where you can catch them in case you had missed some of the earlier ones, which dealt with such topics as climate change and sustainability, disability seen in a positive light, empowering women, forms of protest, genocide and survival, indigenous populations, human trafficking and homelessness, migration and immigration, race, prejudice, discrimination, youth and children, which is today's topic, and LGBTQ rights. And of course, if I forgot some or one along the way, you can catch it on our website by going to the Spark streaming website, which we are streaming the films from. And there you will see the films all listed under these thematic categories in the different film blocks where you can watch them. One thing I want to say, because of the fantastic, huge choice of films that we have been able to select for you this year, in total 63 films from 33 countries, a lot of people have said to us, well, there's too many films. I want to watch them all. 1 week is not enough. So our streaming partners have kindly agreed to let us extend. So the festival has been extended until Tuesday midnight. So you have 3 additional days, if you don't count today, which we are already in. You have all day Sunday, all day Monday, and all day Tuesday to catch up on the films and watch whatever you missed. Also Sunday at 5:30 p.m., when I give these times, they are always on Eastern Daylight Savings Time because we are based in New York. So wherever you are, based on that, please make the calculation properly and see what time it is for you, for your time zone. The only thing that is scheduled is these Meet the Filmmakers live chats, which are broadcast live on our YouTube channel and also on our Facebook page and Facebook profile. There are also other events. We already passed most of all the workshops about distribution, about publicity, PR, low budget film production. All of those, with the exception of the low budget film production, because that's a SAG-AFTRA event, you can find them all on our YouTube channel. So I will continue to say, please subscribe to our channel and ring the bell like all the people who go on YouTube do, because then every time we post a new video, you will be notified of that. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram so that you keep abreast, because we are thinking of extending the festival, not just this edition, but doing mini festivals along the way, lead up to our annual big event, and each one will be focusing on a different theme. So this opens up a huge platform and spectrum for filmmakers to shine the spotlight on them as we advocate specifically filmmakers who are not necessarily well known in the industry. They don't have big star names to support their production, or they don't have a lot of money to make big Hollywood blockbusters or whatever. Not that they are so desirable at the end of the day, but to give the platform to voices and stories that otherwise would not be heard. So tomorrow, join us. The link to join the webinar, I called it Celebration, the awards celebration, because it's on Zoom. So that's why celebration is written with a Z. So it's on our website under the schedule. You click the link, you register, and voila, you are going to be with us. So without further ado, let me open the floor and introduce you our host, Raffi Niziblian, who is joining us all the way from Armenia, from Yerevan. Raffi holds a degree from Concordia University, Montreal, Canada, in communication studies, specializing in film and television production. He earned a graduate diploma in community economic development. After his move to Armenia, he founded and is now the creative director of Dean Communications, a full-service communications agency. During this time, Raffi produced concerts with international artists and performers. He has worked on several films for commercial and non-commercial profit purposes. His accomplishments have enabled him to discover opportunities in the international film industry. From 2012 to 2016, Raffi worked as external relations at Parallels Film Production and developed film projects for international co-production markets. He has completed the Best Eve, interesting, program in 2015 and has built a growing network in the European film industry. He speaks 5 languages, like a lot of Armenians, English, French, Armenian, Arabic, and Italian. Raffi has made his own shorts and documentaries. He now produces films mainly from Armenia or with Armenian content for international markets. He recently co-founded IFCA, Independent Filmmakers Community of Armenia, a film cluster to develop the film industry in Armenia. He is now working on several personal projects and a feature film entitled Life Permit, which is in early production. Thank you very much, Raffi, for agreeing to host or moderate this very important panel, because youth and children are very, very important. And Raffi should know a little something about this, being the father of 4 children. Bravo.
True.
So
No,
I will
thank
make
you so
myself
much.
scarce and let you have the floor.
Thank you so much for this great introduction. I think I speak on behalf of all of us when I say really congratulations to everyone who worked really hard. And 8 years, I know how hard it is to put together a festival. So really happy to see this happening now. So Socially Relevant Film Festival will be extended. This is great news also for me, because I haven't yet had the opportunity to watch all the films. And some of the films, especially the ones we'll be talking about today, have just been fantastic and very inspirational to watch. So what I'd like to do is just give the opportunity to all our guests here today to take a short minute and introduce themselves and the film they are going to be talking to us about. And then we'll carry on and have a very engaging discussion, I promise. So Ron, would you like to start?
Your mic is muted, Ron. Yeah, everybody, please remember to mute your mic when you're not speaking, but to unmute it when you are.
Okay, I'll start again. My name is Ron Burke. I'm in Portland, Oregon, USA, and my film is Terror and Hope, The Science of Resilience.
Good. Did you made this film this year? I mean,
it was finished in December 2020. It's December 2019. 19. But I premiered it in June of
Okay.
2020.
Good. All right. We'll be looking forward to talk about that.
Yeah.
Hi, Patrick. Let's talk to Vicki. The floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Vicki Rhodes. I'm the executive producer, and cast member of Song of the Open Road, the story of the Southern California Youth Chorale, which was a documentary short about an honor choir from 1967 to 1978 in the Southern California area. And we finished September 2018 and then started applying for different film festivals and have been doing pretty well, and just trying to get the word out and of this fantastic experience that we had.
And we'll be talking about the experience really shortly. Apurva, you're the editor?
Yeah, I'm the editor for Birds Without Wings.
Birds Without, yeah.
Yeah, this was a documentary short which was shot in 2019 by my director Rishabh Thakkar, and we worked on it through like December 2019 to 2020, and we aired it in 2020.
Cool. It
Yeah.
was really motivational film to watch. I will talk about some of the highlights of the films in a bit.
Yeah.
Omrit, would you like to introduce yourself and the film, please, just shortly?
Yeah, of course. My name is Omrit Cheng. I'm the director of OK Boomer, a documentary short that follows the lives of a group of student activists in New York City fighting for school integration. And it was filmed in 2019 and edited in part of 2019 to 2020.
Yeah, I also noticed at the end of the film, you make reference that the movement had to take a break, namely because of the pandemic. So it's a quite recent film that also is in line with what we're living right now in terms of restrictions and the pandemic and all the Zoom calls henceforth. Derick, would you like to talk to us about your film project and not the project, the film itself?
Yeah,
Are you-
so
yeah.
Oh, yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Derick. I was a youth producer from the film Quaranteens. That was from last year. And so basically, that film, our short documentary film, was centered around the lives of teenagers during the COVID pandemic. And also, but not only that, but also, how it also like affected, everyone else, such as, like frontliners or essential workers.
I see. That's pretty interesting. Patrick, you're the last but not least on the panel. Please introduce yourself. Endless Summer. I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Please turn on your mic. Yep, there we go. Perfect.
How's that?
Good.
Okay, my name's Patrick, and I'm the director of An Endless Summer, which is a docudrama which we made last year during the very first lockdown we had. I'm based on the Isle of Man, but the film was made remotely with Freya, who's the subject of the film, who is based in Shrewsbury, and it's about her experiences being kind of a new single mother and the kind of feelings of having this extra time with her child and then having to go back to work after this very extended period of time together.
Sounds fascinating. So we'll talk more about this film. So since you were the last speaker, Patrick, maybe we can start talking about like, where did the idea and the motivation to make this film about this single mother come from? Like, did something happen that motivated you to make this, or you had it in mind and you were looking for your subject, and how did that happen?
Well, I think there was the opportunity through the Isle of Man Arts Council to produce COVID-related works. They had a lot of sort of live events that had been cancelled because of the pandemic, and so they had this money that they could put into COVID sort of related projects. And Freya is somebody, myself and Bethany, who run the company here on the Isle of Man, we've known Freya since university. and she's an actress primarily, but then she took some time off. She had a baby in September 2019, and so she took time off, obviously, to look after Lila, who's her baby, and then just as she was about to get ready to go back to work as an actor, this all locked down, and so we'd kept in touch with her because we were very close friends, and so we had this opportunity to tell this story. And we were struck by her story because she's nothing will ever stop Freya in her. She's like so driven, and yet she's absolutely loved the time she's had with Lila, and so being able to capture all the emotions of that was really a dream come true as a sort of a filmmaker, really. And so we had to spend the time developing the format of making it. We wanted to make it so it looked like we were in the same room, when in actual fact we were in two different countries. So we spent a lot of time developing the methodology of doing that, and we shot a version of the film here. So we established all the visuals we wanted, and so we shot them here and we edited them so that we could send her kind of a test version of the film, and then all the equipment we used went over with her, and she spent the time then kind of recreating it. So it was really a nice mix of this story that we were really enthused by and we wanted to tell, but also this new type of technology, which was driven by the fact that we couldn't do very much traditionally.
But interesting. So she also self-directed.
Yes. Yeah.
That's quite a challenging feat for an actress who's also a new mother, who's facing new challenges given the lockdown. We see a lot of the challenges also in Birds Without Wings, where we talk about younger children not being able to dream. That's the essence of trying to find these children who don't know how to dream of a future. And the Voice of Slums NGO offers them the opportunity to sort of discover and learn how to dream. Can you tell us a little bit how the directors and how the team came about, making this film?
Yeah. The director is a really good friend of mine, Rishabh, and I remember him researching a lot about the main two people of Voice of Slum, that is Dev and Chandni. And the beautiful part about the story is that they also come from the same background. They were also a part of the slums. They know the slums so well. And how they basically, motivate these children to come and study. And these children basically are they're so tied up because they don't have any amenities, they don't have any luxury, and they're always being taught to work with their parents at a young age, and they don't know the importance of education. They don't know the importance of having that kind of a luxury life, nothing. And I really admire Dev and Chandni, they themselves go to the slums and call these children and ask them to join school. And
I like how they don't just ask, they sort of they act like a big brother or a big sister who sort of disciplines them and says, we'll be coming to pick you up tomorrow morning. Make sure you're clean and ready to go. And that's a really, but my question was, how did the team, the director, Rishabh, how did he think, okay, this is going to be a great film? Is it something he experienced, or did he just discover by doing research?
I think the whole process of him going and getting the whole idea of what Voice of Slum was and what Voice of Slum was actually doing for the kids kind of turned out in a way. When we sat in the cutting room, we actually figured out that we have so much content, we know so many things that not many people in the world actually know about, So
that's so interesting, because that's going to bring me to Vicki, who in the film that you see the characters and they say, we didn't know we had such talent until Jean brought all of that out. And it's a little bit not so much learning to dream, but learning to become more self-confident, to discover oneself. Can you tell us a little bit about the motivation? Why was this film made? Was it made before? I think Gene has passed away now. Was it made before or after as an homage?
It was made before as an homage to him, because he, as much as he had done, I don't think that he ever realized how much he had touched so many people, and that my motivation for this was not just, yes, we were able to sing and perform and travel, and that was wonderful, but to have someone who was not related to you, who is not an uncle, who is not who doesn't need to have
a parent or something,
a parent or something, come to you and say, I believe in you. I believe that you can do more than what you are giving me. I can see it in you. And
the challenge is not just believing, but he was pushing people to do it more, not just believing. He was saying, okay, now do it again and do it again. And that's really wonderful.
That was the whole impetus. And I wanted him to know from us how much that impacted our lives, because I don't think he ever knew until he saw the film. And when he saw the film, he burst into tears, and he just kept saying, but I'm just me. I'm just me. But just to show how much you can affect someone, like a Porva's film of somebody who just comes and says, hey, I care about you, and this is what I'm willing to do to care about you and show you how much you
I want to talk about that, and later on bring it to today's generation, like younger generation. So speaking of which, Amrit, maybe you want to tell us a little bit as to, what is today's generation doing to move and shake things, and how you guys came about to discovering or finding this topic as a film subject for your film.
Yeah, I think today's generation, I mean, very broadly speaking, are like deeply impressive and like very socially engaged and have a wide set of skills and abilities to tell their own stories. It's something that even just being a few generations past, I'm like very impressed with. I'm like, oh, you know how to compellingly say something on TikTok, you know how to be on this platform, you know how to like share your stories in a multiplicity of ways. For me, in 2019, I started a graduate program in documentary media studies, where the task was to complete a documentary short over the course of a year. And I started, thinking about, I come from a background in nonprofit advocacy, and I was thinking about what sort of issue I wanted to explore. And along the way of figuring out kind of what was the issues that were bubbling up in New York City at the time, I was really gripped by the fact that New York City has some of the most segregated public schools in the country, which was really surprising to me, just geographically, it being in the north and it being such a diverse metropolis. So I felt like I wanted to.
I'm still stunned.
It's really shocking, and I was like, oh, there's something there. And then along the way, I met the folks at Teens Take Charge, this really impressive organization where students were truly at the helm of all the decisions. And I met Alexander Rodriguez and Marcus Alston, and they both just really drew me in. And I felt like I really wanted to know more about what motivated them, what their plans were, what their aspirations for what society could look like were. So that's kind of how the idea sprang to life.
I like how you ended it with them, but then it's sort of, they handed the torch to this young girl, speaking and continuing their actions, although they sort of pulled away from that specific movement, but still being activists. The movement continued, and that's really something that older generations can learn a lot from. Okay, so Derick, let's talk about the film Quaranteens. you started talking to us a little bit about it and how teens were living during the pandemic, but I think you're going to need to give us a little bit more as to, how did teens cope with the pandemic, and why did you decide to make a film about that?
Well, yeah, being a youth producer, I really didn't well, I was a part of the film, I didn't really got the idea or came up with it. But I remember that in the beginning, when I was first finding out in the news about COVID, I was still going to EVC, Educational Video Center, which is the main organization that I was a part of, a nonprofit. And then I still remember that day that they told us that we weren't going to be able to be in person anymore. And so then a few days later, my supervisor Kate, she suggested to us that a good documentary topic we should try to create is something during the COVID pandemic. And something that we came up with was teens living during this pandemic, and also but going beyond that, with how also it's affecting everyone, from maybe nurses, the NYPD,
Frontline workers, yeah?
Yeah, frontline workers.
Okay,
and so yeah.
Pretty cool, in the sense of taking something current, something that is, I would even call traumatic, for a lot of us around the globe, and turning it into a story that is told and shared by many other people from the same generations, people living across borders, but experiencing the same trauma, I would guess. And I think, speaking of trauma, now I'd like to talk to Ron about Terror and Hope, the science of resilience. And how did you come about to find about this science?
Well, my previous film was Lessons of Basketball and War, and it was about Somali refugee middle school girls in the United States and the issues they were having with acculturation, trying to please their parents who wanted to hold on to their traditions they brought from Somalia, along with dealing with the sort of the pop culture, sexually obsessed music, rap, all of that things that are happening in the United States. And after that, I was introduced to Mercy Corps, which is headquartered here in Portland. They're an NGO, and what they were doing, coordinating with a group of scientists from Harvard and Yale and Hashemite universities in Jordan on studying the toxic stress and the impact it has on children and families, and trying to understand what can be done by an NGO that can help give these children a chance at a better life. So that's sort of how it happened.
Yeah, this the Mercy Corps seems to be center and forefront of the film, with the researchers and the scientists. One of the things that was compelling to see how the researcher was saying, the amount of stories she had to listen through and how that affected her personally. That was quite daunting, and something that, I was thinking, maybe as a filmmaker, you are there, you're making this film of a researcher discussing or talking about really personal stories of these humans running, for their lives, basically. Yeah. How did you react, personally, on a personal level? How did you cope with all those amounts of stories?
Well, it was delayed. I do not speak Arabic.
Sure, exactly.
I was shooting this. My cinematographer is Jordanian, so he spoke Arabic, and I was sort of fly on the wall. But I got the visual cues. I heard after the fact what was being discussed, but I was quite insulated, which is really different. I wasn't comfortable because I really didn't know what was going on, but I could feel emotionally. You can tell from people, body language, what is happening. You just don't know the specifics. And in the editing room, it was sort of jaw-dropping, some of the horrors that these families and these children had to live through. And it was something, too, that I decided when I was making it that I really didn't want to spend time on politics, just the bare minimum, stay away from politics, but really concentrate on the impact of living through these experiences on the children themselves and look at it from a very human, emotional level, and also through the lens of science, which I don't know of any other film that has done that. And there's been many, many films on refugees, and especially Syrian refugees, over the last several years. But I think this is the only one I know of that really is looking at it from a scientific perspective, which I thought was unique. And I think there are things that can be learned from that you just don't get when you look at the politics or the issues of providing food and shelter.
I think that one of the speakers brought it home when she put it in a global context, where she said there's a lot of hate, anger in the world, and what we're all missing right now is compassion. Yeah. And I think that may resonate, with all of the whatever is going on today, yeah, with all the anger. I mean, you also know that there was a war recently on our borders.
Yes.
So we have a lot of displaced people that have lost their homes, drones shooting bombs, really, really like stories that we only saw in movies. We wouldn't believe that this would actually, be something that we would feel. So yeah, the stress, the trauma, I think that toxic stress really is an interesting topic just to go even further in, talk about. But I want to maybe jump to another topic and talk about maybe teens. I think there's Patrick, Amrit, and Derick. You're working with teens, and one of the things that I know from experience, both from volunteering with young people to actually living with young people, teens in my house, and so on. I know how hard it is to keep time, to keep focus, follow the pace, perhaps. Does any one of you want to tackle that? I can name you, but I would like to see if maybe Amrit, maybe you want to tackle that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was fortunate in that the subjects that I met were extremely committed activists. Like they spent, and that was something I tried to also show in the film, was like the amount of time that they were pouring into their activism was really, it blew me away. And so it wasn't so much there was a challenge in like keeping them on schedule or keeping their focus. It was like keeping up with them was the important thing. And I think, just for I think I came to this film from a place of, it had been an exhausting few years of the current administration in the US with a lot of social unrest. And I was really motivated to try to figure out what was still driving young people to have faith that, large systems could be changed. So that was kind of the approach. Oh, Rafi, your mic is muted.
Oh my God, I've been speaking with a muted mic. Derick, did you face similar issues with keeping time schedules, or you keeping up with the people your subjects, and tell us a little bit about the process that you had to go through?
Yeah, honestly, in the beginning I thought it was gonna be a little easier, and I thought it was gonna be like, less harder in person because, you'll be stuck at home, you're like just like relaxing a bit. But I guess during the process of making the film Quaranteens with my other EVC peers, was that it's something like I've never like seen before, or like have really like thought about. Like this really, this whole pandemic is really taking a toll on them, and not only them but us, and our our supervisors. And one of the things that I think was most challenging was trying to have like a fixed schedule, and just trying to like just not think about the negatives, and but mostly like the positives. Trying to have like a healthy state of mind. And
Were you able to highlight the positives? Were you able to find them, much easier than you thought you would, or was it more challenging just to try and find the positive?
I would say it would be more challenging to find the positives, because like I said, seeing everyone like losing someone from COVID, or just interviewing some like, I know we interviewed a doctor before, and just hearing her perspective, and just what she does, it was like really like impactful. And it really makes you like think like, this whole thing like changed our lives, and it's something that we'll always like remember. But yeah.
Patrick, your challenge was probably more technical, I would say. I mean, thinking about how you had two sets and you made it into one, because you're dealing with one, I guess, young person. So I think it's much easier to maybe coordinate this, but the technical part seems to be more the challenge, right? Or am I mistaken?
I think it was. I mean, the tricky thing really was working with a baby. I think that's a challenge in any kind of filmmaking, is working with. She was Lila was like 10 months when we were making the film. So I think Freya said that what was difficult there is that in kind of traditional fiction acting, she'd have multiple takes to tackle the each moment, each shot. And then but in this case, if Lila got bored, that was the end of it. She had to make do with what she'd shot. So that was, I think, difficult on her end. I think the whole process ran very smoothly, really, because we had the time on our end to work out the kind of technical kinks in it. We were going to send a monitor so that she could see it, and then we couldn't get the monitor to be compatible with the iPhone we shot it on, so the monitor went. And so you could kind of work out each kind of, we could face the hurdles, and then we could send Freya the film and the equipment that we knew worked. So we kind of worked out a lot of the problems, and the problems that she had to deal with, or the tricky things that she had to deal with, were Lila, becoming bored of things and everything else. And I think the thing that really worked for us was that Freya was on equal footing with us all the way through it. It was our project, the three of our project, in that we the three of us wrote it. We put all the time into it, the three of us. So I think there wasn't this sense of, like traditionally an actor would be working on somebody else's project. Yeah. They're brought in and they do their job, and then they go home. Whereas with Freya, it was as much her project. And I think the reason it worked so well is because we have years of trust together, and also, we were all motivated by this project being ours and being the shared thing that we could all work on. So that made it run a lot smoothly than we feared when we first came up with the idea. We were terrified it was going to be an awful disaster, and the technology was going to break down and all sorts of things. So the fact that it came out as well as it did, we're very pleased by.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the footage you have from the iPhone, because I also wanted to talk to Apurva about this, on how some of the footage of the film was actually sort of like a hidden camera when the younger children were going to find other children, source them or scout them and bring them in or convince them or at least understand what's going on. I guess this was hiding from families who wouldn't otherwise speak in front of a camera. Can you tell us like the challenge of putting this, the hidden camera sort of footage, because not all footage would have been clean footage. I'm pretty sure this. So now we're talking about technical stuff. This is where you come in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was when I received the footage, it was really fun to watch because we saw the footage in like when obviously the parents were looking at the cameras versus when the parents were not looking into the cameras and talking, and we actually realized at that time they were telling stuff which actually was the problem, like those were the problem. Like they go and they find like kids in construction area sites, and these kids are helping their parents out, like doing stuff, and the parents are telling Chandni that, hey, we can't send our kids because we work and we travel, so we have to keep taking them along with us wherever we go. So I really enjoyed the process of this hidden camera footage, though obviously we had a lot of technical difficulties with the sound, and we had to like mix and match, like wherever we could find like dialogue, we would use the dialogue there and, mix and match sound here and there. But overall, the experience of the hidden camera was basically all these small aspects in the slums of Delhi that we wouldn't have been able to go there and, find them at that moment.
Okay, great. Vicki, let's bring it home. So your film talks about a whole generation of people in the 60s that were, we're talking about nuclear explosions. We're talking about war, Vietnam, in the States was in a state of shock as well. The Cold War, so much happening at that time for those youth, for your generation, and how you dealt with it through this film is quite evident that you put artistically and emotionally efforts into a project that helped you learn about the world and learn about each other, learn about yourself. Really joy to watch. It was just a pleasure to watch from beginning to the end. Maybe because I'm also a dancer and a singer, or was. But yeah, this film is about a generation of a few decades ago. What does that give to the next generation, the future generation, these young people, in these films that we just watch throughout, like the Syrians, the people in New York, in India, and all over the world? So what does that give them?
I think part of what motivated Gene to do this in the first place was that one year he had a sabbatical and he went around the world as much as he could. And he came home and he was so excited to tell his students, he was a high school music teacher, to tell his students all about these other cultures and these other places and these monuments and the people, and nobody cared because they were in Southern California. They wanted to go surfing. They wanted to hang out. They wanted to work on their cars. And he was so frustrated in this excitement that he had of really the world had opened up to him, and he wanted to have the world open up to these people. And I feel like the same thing happens now. Is you go in, sometimes you talk to certain groups of teenagers and they're just on their phone, or they're interested in becoming an influencer, or and it's all insular. And it's about what can I do sometimes to be famous, as opposed to the people in these films who are trying to bring about change. And so I think that seeing a film like this and saying, it's more than just you. It's more than just the people in your town. It's more than just the people in your city, your state, your nation, that we're all in this together. And I think especially all these films have been impacted in some way by pandemic, which happened all the way around the world. So it's like, I can talk to you, you're in a completely different country, but you had very similar circumstances to what I have gone through in my country. And I think that when we start thinking globally, then we will all be stronger for it. That no culture is better than another. It's different, but their difference can maybe bring out something that you never thought of. And I think that just trying to make this international, trying to bring this to people. And some people had, like in the film, never left the country before. And then they have been travelers ever since. It has opened up their world. And the music, which is universal. I mean, you don't have to understand the words to understand the music. And so we did songs in other languages. We had to learn, what does it mean? Not just how do you sing it, but what does it mean so that you could really bring it to an audience? And then we would have days when we would have, we would go to some place and there would be a cultural for us to enjoy and to see that culture.
Yeah, music. You say music, and I just remembered that I had a question for Apurva as well. But the film, watching it is just song after song after song. So it's like a big music video. It's well done. Obviously, because it's about a choir and a dance troupe, and that's the choral, the essence of the film. But Apurva, did you know that one of the songs used in the film is actually an Armenian duduk instrument? So I was watching it and I was like, whoa. So there you go, multiculturalism, and lots of influence, global influence. Amrit, speaking of this topic of, trans borders, what we're living right now is actually very global. It's maybe bringing us closer and understanding that, humanity is humanity regardless of where you live and what kind of language you speak and what kind of cultures you practice. There's a quote in the film that says status quo, what it means to be American. And I think it's talking about, the whole film is about generation gap, and the whole title, Okay Boomer, is actually genius. And just that one word demonstrates the generation gap. So this quote also reflects this generation gap, where you have the status quo and people not willing to budge or actually take action, and then the younger generation, there's even a place and say, do your jobs, right? So you can see that the clash is happening. Do you believe that this actually is not just an American issue, and we can see it through news and other instances around the world?
I do. I mean, I'm not obviously, as a U.S. citizen steeped in what's happening in the U.S., I'm not quite as knowledgeable across the world, but I would say I feel like if you look back in just history, across social movements, youth has always had a very central place in pushing this idea of how societies can be re-envisioned and restructured. And I think that's a global thing. I don't think all movements are only comprised of young people, but I do think they're an integral ingredient across the world. And I think there's something special about I don't want to say a youth mindset, because the characters or the people I met through my film had a very advanced and mature world views. But there's something bold about it. There's something that they still see possibility for like radical change, not even incremental or significant, but like very big, bold, systemic change. And I think that's a certain edge. That's something you can have throughout your whole life, but definitely when you're in those years of your teens, it's kind of comes naturally to you.
I can also see that, you know, they even went to the extent of burning out. I mean, mature people, activists, but you know, like their lives are put on hold because they have to become activists for a certain cause. So one other, Ron, I wanted to talk to you about this generation related, because your film also touches upon that, and there's actually even a research based on DNA to show how trauma through generations have transcended and have passed on. Can you tell us a little bit about that? So it's not just about emotions and feelings and anger, but there's actually a scientific basis of how trauma is transcended from families to fathers to mothers to children and their children. Just a quick glance on that.
Okay, it's difficult to be too quick, but it's called epigenetics.
No, we have time, so
okay.
yeah.
It's called epigenetics, and my film follows these researchers in two studies. The first study, which was concluded, was on adolescence, and the study, which is still going on, is looking at the effect that trauma and stress has on generations. And they actually were studying both through biomarkers and DNA and through interviews the impact of key traumas that happened in Syria on mothers during their pregnancy, during those periods, and how that impacted their children. And they will be continuing to see how it impacts future generations, because, and this blew me away, I didn't realize it, how stress can actually change a person's DNA.
Wow.
So it's not just psychological. It's not all in the head. It is in the whole body. It is in the DNA, which forms who we are, which I think is something that really needs to be studied a lot more. And this is one of the earlier studies on this, using mothers who had children during the Syrian war that's currently happening, and also previous events that happened in Syria over their parents' generation.
The 80s and the 90s, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
correct.
Exactly. That's a fascinating study. I mean, I think it'll give us a lot to understand us as humans, regardless of the traumas that we lived through, be it war, pandemic, or natural disasters. So before wrapping up, I want to ask a few questions regarding this festival, the socially relevant festival. How did you come about finding this festival and feeling that it's the right platform for your film? Patrick?
So when we had completed the film, we had sent it to a festival strategist, the film festival doctor, who thought that the film would really resonate with people here, and this was the right festival for it. And when we did some research and looked into the festival based off her recommendation, we thought it was the perfect place to enter it into, really.
Good. Vicki, did you know about this festival, or did you come about it because of this film?
No, I was on Film Freeway, and sometimes they send out different festivals, and whenever something kind of sounds really interesting, then I will do more research into it. And I thought, socially relevant, how wonderful that is compared to what we're trying to say is, let's not just look at ourselves, let's look at the world, and let's try to find ways to make that easier. And we found that way in performing and in music. And so I just thought, if we don't get into this festival, then there is no ice cream.
Who is the
I hope
for?
you.
Is it for us or
Yes, for you.
Okay.
It was just socially relevant. Just screamed, "This is the film festival for us."
Very good. Ron, did you have films in this festival before?
No, I believe I entered my previous film in it and didn't get accepted. But it's always been on my radar because it's definitely a festival that has a very big heart and is really interested in social change. And you can't say that about all festivals at all. There's a very small number that really have this view on the power of film. So to me, it was a perfect fit.
I think really Nora's done a great job getting an audience, a following for this festival that sort of expects something more next year. You know, we really are thirsty for these kinds of stories. Congratulations to all of you. Really exciting to be part of this. I'm excited to be part of this discussion right now, but also to have watched your films. And I think, Nora, I'm really happy now that you've extended for 2 more days, because that's going to be my next 48 hours is watching films.
Well, it's interesting that, I jumped in at an opportune moment because they were talking about interesting stuff. Well, Patrick, I should give a raise to your festival doctor because she directed you to the right place. Not every festival doctor has the the capacity of immediately pinpointing and finding out. And I'm happy to see that we are on somebody's radar, so that's good. And yes, to answer Vicky's question, and maybe this is something interesting to everyone, I was a participant at another film festivals forum, which was dedicated to film festivals. And the question was asked, we received because as a filmmaker, as you know, I have a film also in my own festival, I, Migrant Woman, which we were talking about just now in the earlier morning at the NGO CSW. The moment I put it on Film Freeway, I started getting all these invitations from all these different film festivals saying, submit to us, and so on. Yeah, you get flattered as a filmmaker and you go, wow, they all want my film. But unfortunately, not all film festivals really want your film. And we make sure that we never send a letter like that across the board to all filmmakers saying, come and apply to us or give us 50%, here is 50% off, just apply. If it's not something that is exactly up my alley or something that is exactly within the guidelines of the socially relevant film festival. So if somebody's driving you here because of that, then yes, I would say. And we maybe send invitations to 2 or 3 films that Film Freeway sends our way as something that could be of interest to us, just to give you an example. And the other thing is, we do not go around the big film festivals or around the big releases and invite films that are already doing well. We focus on filmmakers who submit to us through the festival channels, because we know that if we don't offer the platform, chances are these voices will never be heard. And it's another important thing to know, that it's very important to read carefully the guidelines and make sure that it is a true fit for your film. Because we also get a lot of films that are submitted to us, and you can tell that the filmmaker didn't do their homework. They just sent letters across the board, and you can tell. And it's fine if it suddenly falls right. We will not hold that across the board letter against the filmmaker. But a lot of times it's not a fit and it's money thrown out the window. So these are my 2 cents of advice to filmmakers. The other thing I always like to say is I cannot thank the filmmakers enough. Not just the 4 or 5 that are here, or 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of you, wow. And Rafi, you're also a filmmaker, 7 filmmakers, and me, I can also thank myself, the 8 of us. I cannot thank us or you enough for dedicating your time and life and career and talent to telling stories that mattered, stories about human interest stories, about social issues with social relevance, because there is also every possibility for you just to go and make a commercial movie with a lot of violence and chases and explosions and special effects that might be okay, the woo and ooh and ah factor, but then after that, what has it left me with? Besides a headache, you know, that's the additional point. So before we wrap up, we usually, when the discussion is interesting, let it run a few more minutes. And I see that youth and children deserve a lot of voice, a lot of time. So please feel free, anybody who wants to interject or say something, or Rafi, if you want to ask an all-round other question or wrap it up with your own remarks, feel free to do so.
Maybe I'll give like the floor to the speakers, and I'll say a wrap up message at the end. But yeah, is there anyone that felt like they wanted to say something at this time that perhaps through the questions we weren't able to touch upon? Yes. Yeah, Vicki, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that our film is a little different in that we do have teenagers in it, but that our film is really told backwards. Now we're in our 60s and 70s, and we're looking back at our lives and how someone who instilled confidence in us changed the way that we looked at ourselves, changed the way that we held ourselves, and that even if you never sang again, the influence of having that confidence being put to you was so strong that maybe you became an attorney, maybe you became a scientist that you would have never thought of doing. Maybe you just traveled, which you never thought of doing. And so our story is told a little different, and I think differently. And I think that that's very important to also be able to say, yes, I sang when I was, 18 in front of 20,000 people, but that's not what's important now. The confidence that I got from that action is what keeps with me today.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people were inspired enough to keep continuing in their entertainment field, and they became singers in their own rights and entertainers, beyond the project that you were all working in together. Really, I'm so happy.
Yeah, we are really over time now. You want to
discussion? I'm wrapping up. Yeah. So thank you very much, and I'll be keeping an eye on your other projects. We didn't have enough time to talk about future projects or what else you want to do with this film. Where else would you send it so more people can see it and more people can be inspired by it? Just a nice message from me to you is just keep doing what you're doing, because it's really great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Rafi. And this conversation can be accessed on our YouTube channel. So if you didn't get a chance to, or maybe you want to sit down and listen the whole thing again, or tell your friends or share it, please feel free to do so. It's going to be on our YouTube channel for your enjoyment. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Nora and Rafi.
It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.